Hello and welcome to the Flix Forum podcast, where each episode we go back and we look at a Netflix original film in the order of release. Today we have Netflix 390th film from 2020. It's the Mexican adventure drama mystery called Tragic Jungle, or Selva, Tragica. It's directed by Yulene Olaizola and stars Indira Rubie Andrewin, Gilberto, Barraza, and Mariano. I'm Jesse. I'm your host. Apologies for pronunciation of some of the names. This is a little bit out of order. We're up to the 2021 films, but this is a 2020 film because this is when it was released on Netflix and it did play some festivals beforehand. So let's get into the crux of Tragic Jungle. As always, we're going to have some spoilers. So if you haven't seen this film and you're interested in checking it out, give us a pause and come back a little bit later on. We start with the Fast Flicks, where we do a quick little summary of what the film is all about. So this one, it's about a girl who runs away from an arranged marriage into the jungle and into transformation. Interesting. This is an international film where there's very little to find out about it around the world. So the direct Spanish translation, so Selva Tragica, directly translates to Tragic Jungle. So this film is set in a jungle and some tragedies that occur in this jungle. In Chinese, it's called Lin Zoigon Tan. Not sure what that means. In Slovak, it's called The Fatal Jungle. That makes sense. In Hungarian, it's called Angry Jungle. In Japanese, it's The Jungle of Sorrow. In Russian, it's Tragedies of the Jungle. In Swedish, it's The Jungle of Tragedies. And in Vietnamese, it's The Tragic Forest. So all play on that idea of this forest, this jungle, playing possibly with the mind of some people that are in this jungle. The director of photography, Sofa Ogiorio, explained in an interview that she rarely used fill lights when shooting this film to create this jungle that looked cold and dark, an image far removed from the radiant warmth often associated with the tropics. So that's literally the only quote I could find about this film. There's very little else to read about it or how it was put together. It did debut at the Venice Film Festival on the 9th of September 2020, so that's why we have this release date of 2020. Played a variety of festivals around the world before hitting Netflix worldwide on the 9th of June 2021. It was filmed in Chetumal in the Quintana Roo area of Mexico. Beautiful part of the world. This did have 7 wins and a further 16 nominations across a variety of awards, in particular the Ariel Awards in Mexico, the San Sebastian International Film Festival, Venice, and a variety of others, including nominations for Best Film, Screenplay, Acting, etc. What are the critics and audiences saying about this film? On Rotten Tomatoes, this sits at 74%. That is fresh. That is on 27 critic reviews, so solid there. However, the audience, almost the complete opposite, sits at 31%. That's on less than 50 ratings, so not as well received by the audience. If we go to IMDb, sits at a 5.6 out of 10 on 1,200 ratings, so not a lot of ratings, but a better score, I would say, but not as good as Letterboxd. Letterboxd, it sits at a 3.1 out of 5. That's on a bit over 2,000 ratings, only been logged by 3,000 people. And then Metacritic, where we have the traffic light system of red, yellow, and green. The critics have it in that green section. Positive sits at 70 out of 100. That's only on 4 reviews, though. And there's only 5 audience reviews, but it sits at a 5 out of 10. So in that middle section of yellow. My summary is mixed bag, absolute mixed bag. I'm not going to have an awful lot to say about this film either, because this is a bit of an experimental film, I'd say, more a visual film than anything. So let's give my early thoughts. I think, and this is an interesting thought for me. I rarely read up on a film before watching it for this podcast, and this is probably an instance where I should have, because knowing a little bit more about the context of the culture and the myths would have added a little bit to the viewing experience rather than the post-viewing experience. But other than that, it's visually impressive. It's well made. Solid film, I think. So the characters in this film's about Agnes. Agnes is this character I mentioned in the intro. She's arranged into a marriage with this white English settler, and she goes on the run wanting to escape. She's a virgin and can't quite understand the way her sister, who we meet briefly, uses her body. But this progresses throughout the film as she takes on this new persona almost. And Florence, her sister, who I touched on there, possibly a nurse, she helps Agnes escape from this being brought into this white household, I guess, with this guy called Norm. And she's the opposite of Agnes in that she seems okay to toe the line of settlers and people that are using and abusing the local people, and lets men have what they want to begin with. But she mentions that idea of taking control. She dies very early on, and I've said spoilers in this film. I'm trying not to spoil too much, but Agnes is left on her own, where she meets a variety of characters. These are gum tree workers. They are scraping the liquid out of trees to get gums. I'm not going to identify each of these characters because they almost all blend into the same kind of character. There's, the ones who are poor. These are the people that are doing the work that no one else wants to do. They fear their boss. They want to better themselves, but they get lured by lust. And this is done through a narration at times throughout as well, about not just the lust of females, but the isolation of the jungle and the dangers of the jungle in this film as well. The director, Yulene Olaizola, she's got 8 directing credits. Her most recent being a documentary on a rock band from Mexico. So interesting little side note there. I haven't seen any of the other stuff, but interesting use of the camera throughout. So scenes for this one. How do we talk about scenes that stood out and scenes that didn't? It's very hard because the plot or the narrative is very limited in what happens in this film. It's more about the visuals that you see throughout, and I think it's hard. So there's one scene where there's this kid, he's up climbing one of the trees to get this gum, and he just drops, and I guess that shocked me a little bit to show the dangers of the jungle, so that was good. The things that didn't necessarily work, there's a few sex scenes that were a little bit unsettling and possibly not needed. You could have shown the characters walk off into the jungle with Agnes, and that would have been enough to draw conclusions. And there's this moment where the white man and his men are on the river hunting for Agnes. He wants her back, and it starts raining heavily on the water where they are, and the camera cuts to Agnes and these workers, and they hear this gunshot, and that's insinuating that the white man isn't too far away, but it's not raining where they are, and they're supposed to be so close and nearby. It just didn't make sense. That was a little bit off-putting, but other than that, this has some themes and some ideas that it's playing on, and I feel like I haven't really said much because I don't really want to spoil this film, but just yet I have to, I guess, to talk a little bit more about this film. But this film's about the exploitation of the white man and of the land and of women and of workers and of resources through the nature and the gum that's in the trees and colonization and seen through the jungle being this presence that nature fights back against humanity and its abuses at times as well. And humans are making these trees almost bleed, and that jungle mentality exhausting those who don't respect the jungle and those mysteries of the jungle and the lure of that sweet nectar as well. But you can also sort of argue that case of strong females and the power that they can have over men throughout this temptation that's seen throughout the film as well. What did I take away? That the visuals of nature were so beautiful throughout, and it's almost like something you'd see on a David Attenborough documentary. The audience is told throughout through voiceover that you shouldn't stop and observe nature in the jungle, but as an audience, that's what we're doing throughout this whole film. So bought into that lure or that sweet nectar of the jungle throughout as well. IMDb, and this is where I didn't jump on IMDb to check anyone out, but I needed to look up, because Agnes is referred to by the narrator as the Tebe or the Extabe, which I needed to work out what this meant. So I looked, and like I said, I didn't know this until after the film. I had to look it up, that this character is a Mayan folklore demonic femme fatale type character who preys upon men and dwells in the forest, and that context of who Agnes was representing makes it very explicit as to what she is, which I didn't know while I was watching. So I think that's probably an interesting thing for people that don't have the cultural background of the Mexican folklore or the Mayan folklore to understand who this character is and what's playing out on the screen as it's happening. That leads to some questions and some ponderings, and the idea this white male abuser / predator who is literally looking at females and humans as property. I found it a little bit strange, I guess, that he didn't get a just ending. He was able to just sail off in his boat and be okay. So I thought that was a little bit interesting. And Agnes, obviously, now that I know that context of her being this mythical type creature or from folklore, like she's representative of those spirits of the trees and the jungle and womanhood and all of the above. And that leads to one of the opening scenes, I guess, where Agnes's sister dies, and my interpretation of the film, I guess, is that Agnes died in the forest with her, and this allowed her body to be used as a vessel by this ex-Bay character to exact vengeance upon men, I guess. But I guess you could also interpret it that she's possibly still alive too, and this human girl is trying to survive in the only way that's accessible to her, and following her sister's footsteps. But I think it's very clear, especially through the final shot where we have Agnes returning to the water, and to me that almost shows that the start, we see this alligator possibly eating Agnes, and that's why she goes back into the water at the end as well. So some little thoughts on this film. Let me know what you think, but I'm going to wrap this one up. We give the films a rating out of 5 on this show. For me, I can see how someone watching this film might think it's a complete ball fest, but that's probably because of the very simple narrative. But I think it's done conceptually through really good imagery that worked for me. A good story. The more you know about it, the more that you can probably appreciate this film. So I'm giving this film a 3 out of 5. Solid for me. We're on socials. We have Instagram, we have Facebook, and we have X, formerly known as Twitter. The idea is, did you find this film boring? Is this film boring to you? To me, no, it's not. I think that you just got to sit back, enjoy the visuals, and work out what's going on. But I can completely understand. Let us know. Other than that, we are back next week. Next week, we have a 2021 film. We're back into the order. This is a coming-of-age sports drama film called Skater Girl. This one's directed by Manjari Manklavi and stars Rachel Sanchita Gupta, Shafin Patel, Amit Magira, Jonathan Redwin, and Wahida Rehman. So give that one a watch. If you're interested, join me next week. As always, hope you've enjoyed hanging out today. I don't think many people have seen this film, but if you have, let us know in the comments on our social posts, and I will see you next week.